Hey guys, welcome. It's that time again. Sports and shorts. Sports and shorts of sorts. I almost messing up my own title. How am I doing that? 70 episodes in now. That's crazy right now. 70 episodes deep. So, just like every other episode, we're going to start episode 70 with our jersey mentions. And just like the ones lately, the 60s, and looking like the early 70s, we're going to start in the NFL. And we're going to jump in the Ren City time machine real quick to go back to talk about former linebacker Sam Huff. He played offensive line at West Virginia, earned first team All American, led to the Giants selecting him in the third round of the 1956 NFL draft. He had trouble cracking the lineup, though, and the coaching staff didn't really know where to play him. And Huff was on the way to leaving camp until assistant coach Vince Lombardi convinced him to stay. And from there, defensive coordinator Tom Landry drew up a 4-3 defensive scheme that put Huff off the line, had him play the linebacker position, worked dividends, and an injury to the starter, Ray Beck, gave him a chance, and he ran with it, getting the Giants to the 1956 championship game where they crushed the Bears 47-7, and Huff became the first rookie linebacker to start a championship game. He put up great individual performances and helped the Giants get to 5 more title games, but they lost all 5. Lost the 58 championship game to the Colts and the first ever NFL game to go to sudden death overtime where the Colts edged out the Giants 23-17. Giants would fall the Colts again in the 59 game. In 61, they were shut out in the game by the Packers. They lost the following big game again to the Packers, and then they'd return to the big game to the following season, this time losing to the Bears. Sam Huff and the Giants were like the 90s Bills of their time, except they actually did get one Super Bowl, so they can say that. And the Giants wanted to shake the team up. Huff went up to Wellington Mara, asked him not to trade him, but the following season, Huff was traded anyway, going to the Washington team, where Huff would get a huge pay increase to join the Redskins, as they were called, and immediately got that defense better. He helped beat his former team, the Giants, 72-41. Following season, Huff would end his 150-game consecutive played streak when he injured his ankle, and the following season would be his last. Retiring after 14 seasons, Huff made 5 Pro Bowls, 4 second-team All-Pros, 2 first-team All-Pros. He was honored by both franchises he played for in the Commanders' Ring of Fame as well as the New York Giants' Ring of Honor. Huff wore the 75 at West Virginia, and his numbers retired there. And Huff was also inducted to the College and Pro Football Hall of Fames. He was diagnosed with dementia in 2013 and passed away at the age of 87 in November 2021. And for the next number 70, sticking on the gridiron, still on the defensive side, talking about former defensive tackle Art Fatso Donovan. And you knew Art Donovan would be a tough guy, with being the son of a boxing referee and the grandson of a former middleweight boxing champ. Got a scholarship to play at the University of Notre Dame way back in 1942, but the outbreak of war caused Donovan to leave after one semester to join the Marine Corps. He remained in uniform for 4 years, serving in the Pacific Theater during World War II, taking part in some of the most intense engagements of war, including the Battle of Luzon and the Battle of Iwo Jima. Earned citations including the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal and the Philippine Liberation Medal. Crazy medals to be for an NFL player. And after the war, he finished his college career at Boston College, leading to a kind of a rough start in his professional career that kind of lacked stability in the teams he played for. They just fell out of business. The Colts fell out of business. The New York Yanks fell out of business. The Dallas Texans, which led Donovan going full circle, returning to Baltimore as the Colts were awarded a franchise again. And he'd actually get a chance to play for a team that wasn't folding. And in that, he put up big numbers. 5-time Pro Bowler, 14 first-team All-Pro, 2 second-team All-Pro, winning back-to-back NFL championships with the Colts. He, of course, played in that 1958 championship game where Donovan played against our first mention in the 70s here, Sam Huff. Donovan made a big tackle in OT to allow Colts Johnny Unitas to lead the Colts on a game-winning drive. In retirement, Donovan was named to the 1950s All-Decade Team, inducted into the now Baltimore Ravens Ring of Honor. His 1970 he was retired by the Colts, which is now in Indianapolis. A little confusing there. Donovan had a very busy post-retirement life, publishing an autobiography, Fatso, and he also appeared on many TV spots and commercials, even appearing on Late Night with David Letterman 10 times. 2013, at the age of 89, he passed away from a respiratory disease in hospice. Larger than life figure that the NFL was lucky enough to have in their game. And we'll stick with the NFL and the defensive side of the ball for our number 70 mentions, going to Jim Marshall. He played collegiate ball with the Ohio State University, picking up second team All Big Ten and a third team All American while there. However, he left before his senior year to play in the CFL with the Saskatchewan Roughriders for a season, and he was part of the rare NFL CFL transaction. You don't see that very often, where he was sent to Cleveland in exchange for Bob Ptacek. And Marshall played one season with the Browns before getting traded to the Vikings. And with the Vikings, he became a household name. 2 Pro Bowl appearances, 3 second-team All-Pro nods. Remember the last NFL championship in 1969 before the NFL-AFL merger. After winning that championship, Marshall and his Vikings would follow the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl IV. With the Vikings, Marshall set 2 NFL records for his longevity. His 270 consecutive games with one team is a record, and that same 270 mark is the most by a defensive player. Retirement, Marshall was named to the 25th and 40th Minnesota Vikings teams, also named one of the 50th greatest Vikings, and was inducted into their Ring of Honor. His number 70 is also retired by the franchise, and upon his retirement, Marshall had played every game in the Vikings franchise history. During his playing days, he recovered 30 fumbles and was a key member of the famous Purple People Eaters. You might know that sweet jam. But despite his legendary career, the one play that sticks out in his career isn't great for him. In a game against the 49ers, he recovered a fumble and ran it 66 yards the wrong way into his team's own end zone before tossing the ball in celebration as it went out of bounds and resulted in a safety. Despite the gaffe, the Vikings still would hold on to win that game thanks to a forced fumble by Marshall. Many forget that he made amends for that brain fart, but man, what a brain fart. It's baffling that he wasn't in the Hall of Fame, but then I broke down his numbers, and his peak does come up a little short, but he's a beloved Viking that's loved by the franchise, and I thought he'd be in, but I don't know if he'll get in the Hall of Fame there. It's been long enough now. We'll stick with the defensive 1970s, and our next mention, Ernie Stautner. He was born in Germany before his family moved to New York when he was 3 years old. He'd served in the Marine Corps during World War II before enrolling at Boston College, where he played both sides of the ball on the offensive and defensive line. He was a teammate of fellow number 70 honoree Art Donovan. He'd get selected in the second round of the 1950 draft by the Steelers, and he'd play his entire career in Steel Town. While there, he'd make 9 Pro Bowl appearances, 4 first-team All-Pros, 5 second-team All-Pros, and after his playing days were done, he'd receive many accolades from his former team. Steelers all-time team, Steelers Legends team, Steelers Hall of Honor, and they even retired his number 70 jersey, which is rare in Pittsburgh, because Ernie Stautner is one of 3 players to have his number retired by the Steelers. There's Mean Joe Green, Franco Harris, who you might remember from episode 32, jersey honorees, and Stautner. He was inducted into the Pittsburgh Pro Football Hall of Fame and was named to the NFL 1950s All-Decade Team. He was a first ballot Hall of Famer as well. He went right into coaching and was actually a player coach in his last years in Pittsburgh. He'd moved to Washington, where he was coaching their defensive line before moving to the Cowboys, where he was a defensive line before becoming a defensive coordinator. He was on that coaching staff that won the Super Bowl, 2 Super Bowls in Dallas. There was the Super Bowl 6 went over the Dolphins and Super Bowl 12 over the Broncos. Stautner would coach one season in the Arena Football League, where he'd win Arena Football Coach of the Year before returning to the NFL to work as a defensive line coach for the Broncos. His last coaching gig in the shortly ran NFL Europe, where he returned to Germany to coach the Frankfurt Galaxy, where he won the 3rd World Bowl, beating the Amsterdam Admirals. It's crazy to think about the NFL Europe. I forgot about that as a kid, but excuse me, Ernie Stautner passed away in February 2006 at the age of 80 from complications of Alzheimer's. Staying in the NFL, but moving to the offensive side of the ball, next number 70 is former offensive tackle Rayfield Wright. He'd go to Fort Valley State to play basketball, where he was a standout. But the football coach there made Wright quit his summer job and get ready for the football season, where he was an experiment. Tried a free safety, punter, defensive end, and tight end. And the experiment worked as it worked to as Wright getting drafted in the 7th round of the 67 NFL draft by the Cowboys. During his first few seasons in the league, he didn't really have a go-to position, so his jersey number the first few seasons went from 85 to 67 to his most recognizable number 70. And his chance starting on the offensive line, he impressed so much he got the job going forward. Rayfield Wright was great at offensive tackle, appearing in 6 straight Pro Bowls while earning 3 first-team All-Pros as well as 3 second-team All-Pros. With the Cowboys, he'd make it to 5 Super Bowls and be on the winning end of 2 of them, Super Bowl 6 over the Dolphins and Super Bowl 12 over the Vikings, where, if you remember, Coach Ernie Stautner might have been part of that defensive coaching staff for those Cowboys teams. His great play led to the Cowboys inducting Wright into the Ring of Honor. He was named in the NFL 1970s All-Decade Team, and his bust is enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Late in life, Wright battled early onset dementia, which may have been credited to numerous head injuries he sustained over his playing career. Wright joined the other former NFL players in a class action suit against the NFL, accusing the league of hiding evidence of head trauma causing degenerative brain disease. That lawsuit was settled in 2015. However, Wright would pass away in April 2022 at the age of 76. We're going to stick with linemen here to don the 70. Our next mention, former guard Logan Mankins. He played college football at Fresno State. And after redshirting his first season, he played great as a freshman, blocking for future number 1 overall pick in the NFL, David Carr. He only allowed 2 sacks that season, and Mankins continued to show off his great blocking capabilities, but faced some adversity when he tore his ACL in preseason practice and missed his junior season. He'd return as a senior, starting every game at left tackle, and did not allow a sack or pressure that season, leading the Mankins earning first-team All-WAC and second-team All-American nods. This got him drafted with the last selection in the first round of the 2005 NFL Draft, where the New England Patriots took him. Despite playing offensive tackle his entire collegiate career, Mankins was moved to left guard by the Patriots and seemed to have no issue with the move, starting all 16 regular season games as a rookie, earning all rookie team mentions. He'd also continue to play for the Patriots for 9 seasons, and despite his great individual numbers and playing for a dominant team like the Patriots, he was never part of a Super Bowl winning team there. He'd make it to 6 Pro Bowls, 1 first-team All-Pro, as well as 5 second-team All-Pro appearances. He'd get to one Super Bowl where he was with the undefeated Patriots team that lost to Eli Manning in Super Bowl 42, and he was also part of the Patriots team that got to Super Bowl 46, who lost to, again, Eli Manning and the Giants. Mankins would get traded to the Bucs, where he'd play his last 2 seasons and make his final Pro Bowl appearance, but yeah, you get many individual honors, like the 2010 All-Decade Team. The Patriots honored him with plenty of recognition. Named to the Patriots All-2000 and All-2010 team. He's named to the Patriots 50th Anniversary Team and the Dynasty Team. Still debate on whether Mankins will get his bust in Canton. And, pretty good accolades, like I said, but not having a Super Bowl ring could hurt his chances, but he's a really good player, really good at his position. And we'll stay with that guard position, going to a current player that's worn the 70 with the same team throughout his career. Talking with Dallas Cowboys, Zach Martin. He played college football for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, where he was a member of the unbeaten Fighting Irish team that went 12-0. Faced off with Alabama in the 2013 BCS title game, where the Crimson Tide crushed the Fighting Irish 42-14. But Martin was also named second-team All-American that season, and the following season they played Rutgers in the Pinstripe Bowl, where Martin won MVP of the game, becoming the first offensive lineman since Jay Huffman in 1959 to receive that distinction in a college bowl game. That great play led to the Cowboys selecting Martin 16th overall in the 2014 NFL Draft, where he was immediately plugged into the right guard position, and he'd be one of 4 rookies selected to the Pro Bowl that season. That also earned him first-team All-Pro selection, and then obviously an All-Rookie team nod. And during his time in Dallas, he's become one of the best guards in the entire league, being named the 7 first-team All-Pros as well as 2 second-team All-Pros. He's made 9 Pro Bowls and was named to the NFL 2010's All-Decades team. Continues to play for America's team in Dallas, and he's always under pressure to win there. But at the end of his career, I see Zach Martin getting into the Hall of Fame. That's just what I think there. Wrapping up the NFL portion, our number 70 jerseys in the NFL. We finished with a youngster, 25-year-old Rashawn Slater. Plays for the Los Angeles Chargers, the same team that drafted him 13th overall out of the 2021 NFL draft, where he played college ball at Northwestern University. Great in the Big Ten, earning third team All Big Ten honors his last season there. He had an immediate impact with the Chargers, named the starting left tackle right off the gate and earned all rookie team selection, also earning a Pro Bowl selection that season. To cap it off, he was brought a second team All Pro selection that same season. His sophomore season, he ruptured a biceps tendon, missed all but 3 games. However, he did have a bounce back season last year, and he's a big part of this Chargers offensive plans going forward, and recently backed up his quarterback Justin Herbert, taking some offense to the quiet leader connotation that seems to follow Herbert, saying he's a guy that does it and he fully supports his quarterback. Good to have a player like that have your back. Going to baseball, the first number 70 mentioned, Oakland A's right-hand pitcher Lucas Erceg. He played college ball with the California Golden Bears, and after becoming academically ineligible, he transferred to Menlo College, and after a year there, he was drafted by the Milwaukee Brewers, playing many seasons in the minor league after getting drafted in 2016 and just waiting on that call to the big show. It wasn't until 2021 that Erceg converted the pitching. He was an outfielder from there. That move elevated his game, and he was traded to the Athletics last year, where he wound up making the 40-man roster. Now he's getting his shot in the big leagues, like I said, after 3 years of converting the pitching. The relief pitcher, he's in with the Athletics as they're trying to move up in the basement of their standings. But we'll stick with current baseball players, and the next number 70 on our list, Boston Red Sox shortstop David Hamilton. Played college baseball with the Texas Longhorns before suiting up in the Cape Cod Baseball League. Wound up tearing his Achilles tendon in an electric scooter accident, causing him to miss his junior season. But after he recovered from his injury, he'd get drafted in the 8th round of the draft by the Brewers in 2019. He'd spend more time in the minor leagues before getting traded to the Red Sox in 2021. Following year, he was named to the 40-man roster. He spent time in the minor leagues before finally making that MLB debut. He started the season in AAA, but got the call up to the big leagues after an injury to Trevor Story, and he's had a pretty good season so far as the Red Sox are looking to have a good run in the second half of the season. We'll wrap up the Major League Baseball portion of the 70 list by going to Washington Nationals left-handed pitcher Mitchell Parker. 24-year-old New Mexico-born pitcher was drafted in the 28th round of the MLB draft, but opted to not sign with the team, playing baseball still, where he'd get drafted the next year in the 27th round, where he'd say, no, playing college ball. And in 2020, he'd get drafted in the 5th round by the Nationals, where he'd sign with the team and make the 40-man roster. This season, Parker made his MLB debut on Jackie Robinson Day, and he's developing as the season goes on. Looks like he's part of the Nationals' plans going forward. Going to the NHL, first number 70, goaltender who was born a few hours from where we're recording right now, Braden Holtby, born in Lloydminster, Saskatchewan, even though he grew up in Marshall. Holtby played in the WHL, real close, the Saskatoon Blades. He struggled initially with the team, but turned things around, getting drafted in the 4th round of the 2008 draft by the Capitals. And after spending some time in the ECHL with the South Carolina Stingrays and the AHL with the Hershey Bears, he'd make his NHL debut. Having an amazing start, just killing it from the beginning with the Caps. He'd helped the Caps go on a postseason run, which earned him the starting job the following season. And despite having a great season, head coach Barry Trotz went to start Grubauer to start the 2018 postseason. And when Grubauer struggled, Holtby took over, and the rest was history. He was more wall than man as he helped guided the Capitals to the franchise first ever Stanley Cup victory. And this time it was he'd make 5 All-Star games, winning the Vezina one year in 2016. He signed a 2-year deal to join the Canucks, where he shared starting duties with Thatcher Demko before becoming a backup. He'd get bought out by the Canucks and signed with the Stars, where he'd get placed on long-term injured reserve and hasn't come back since. Looks like injuries will force Holtby to retire, even though he hasn't hung him up officially yet. I don't know if he'll be Hall of Fame bound, but I see the Capitals honoring the Saskatchewan bowler and goaltender in some way or fashion here. Our second and final 70 mention, and there's another goaltender, Finnish goaltender Joonas Korpisalo. He played hockey in Finland before getting drafted by the Columbus Blue Jackets in the 3rd round of the 2012 draft. He'd sign with the club and start off as a backup for recent Stanley Cup winner Sergei Bobrovsky. And when Bobrovsky left to join the Panthers, Korpisalo took the starting gig in Columbus, helping get them to the playoffs, where Korpisalo picked up his first playoff win. He set a modern NHL record for most saves in a single game, registering 85 saves in a 3-2 quintuple overtime loss to the Lightning. In the last season in his contract with Columbus, he was traded to the Kings, ending his time there, where he had made the 2020 All-Star game. But after his brief time in LA, he'd sign a 5-year deal to join the Senators, but only spent one season in the Canadian capital before getting sent to the Bruins less than a month ago. The Senators moved on from Korpisalo and sent him and some pieces to the Bruins for Linus Ullmark. Korpisalo is expected to be the backup behind Bruins starting goaltender Jeremy Swayman. And like numbers in the 60s, the 70 hasn't been too popular in the NBA. I mentioned in episode 69, Dennis Rodman wanted to wear that number with the Mavericks, but commissioner at the time, David Stern, kiboshed that, and Rodman had to wear number 70 for his 12-game stint in Dallas. I'll talk more about Rodman on episode 91, where I think that's more people think of him there. Italian basketball legend Luigi Dattomi wore number 70 for 18 games in the 2014-15 season. And the other number 70 in the NBA was the 2020-21 season when Serbian big man Nemanja Bjelica wore the number 70 for 11 games with the Heat. So yeah, number 70, more football like we kind of expected, but to the week that's been. How about the weekend here, the Open? I still always call it the British Open, but the Open Championship, the last major of the golf season. All kinds of surprises here, like in the third round when South Korea's Siwoo Kim, outrageous hole-in-one. I was watching it at the time, and it was the longest hole-in-one in Open history, 238 yards. He hit it, and what a roll, right into the hole. It was wild. The first hole-in-one to get hit on the 17th hole at Royal Troon during a major. Just amazing. He didn't finish high in contention, but what a shot. Never forget that one. Going to a wild final round where American Billy Horschel led going into Sunday. It was the first time Horschel had ever led going into the final round of the major. And wow, what an entertaining one we got. The leaderboard was constantly changing throughout the final round, with at least half a dozen guys in the running for the claret jug. But as the round went on, we started to see some magic out of American Xander Schauffele. He'd go on the finish with a 65 on the final day, putting him atop the leaderboard as he finished 9 under on the tournament. He and runner-up Justin Rose, who finished 7 under, finished 2 groups ahead of everyone else, so you didn't have that suspense there. But as golfers wrapped it up, Schauffele could not get caught. He would go on to win the Open, the second major of his career, and the second of the season, winning the PGA Championship earlier this year and now the Open. Becoming just the 5th golfer to win the championship and Open the same year. Or I guess 4th golfer, but 5th time, because Tiger Woods did it in 2000. Tiger Woods did it again in 2006. Padraig Harrington in 2008. And Rory McIlroy in 2014. So that's pretty good company Schauffele's joining there. And he's adding the claret jug to his trophy case. A fantastic tournament with a well-deserved winner. I mentioned Justin Rose finished 2nd. He shared that spot with Billy Horschel, who finished 7 under as well. The South African Tristan Lawrence finished 4th at 6 under. Very fun tournament. Royal Troon. I don't know. I want to go to Scotland. It looks fun. That course would eat me alive, but very entertaining golf. And we go to Formula One here, the Hungarian Grand Prix. But before we get there, Haas has confirmed that Kevin Magnussen will depart his race seat upon the conclusion of the F1 season. So we know Magnussen will be leaving the team. The qualifying had some pretty big talking points. Keeping up with the disappointing qualifying of late for Red Bull, Sergio Perez, Checo would slam into the wall on Q1, ending his qualifying again earlier than it should be, and he'd have to start the race from the 16th spot. Red Bull not happy with that. George Russell, who had earned pole in the race prior, didn't even get out of Q1, qualifying 17th and putting the blame on a decision not to fuel up his car in the changeable conditions in qualifying. Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff did not hold back on his team performance involving George Russell, stating that the session was a total underperformance from literally everybody involved here. Qualifying added more surprises when both Aston Martin and RB drivers made it to Q3, although Yuki Tsunoda would slam to the wall, only bringing a red flag near the end of Q3 qualifying, which really didn't impact how things sat at that time, and the McLarens would sit front row. Lando Norris earning the pole position with teammate Oscar Piastri right next to him. Red Bull's Max Verstappen and Ferrari's Carlos Sainz would start behind them in the second row. And what a wild start to the Hungarian Grand Prix. Three cars all vying for that first lead right off the get-go. McLaren starting up front, but when the race began, Verstappen butted in to have all three cars vying for that spot. The McLarens would snag the front positions with Piastri getting ahead of Lando. It stayed that way for some time, and the McLarens were just leading the race, but with Piastri, like I said, and then Norris right behind him. Both cars went to pit for fresher tires, and as that was going on, Verstappen would take lead of the race. But upon leaving the pits, Lando Norris would sneak ahead of his teammate, and they both trailed Max, like I said, but they already gave Lando the heads up, like when the time comes, you're going to have to give that spot back to Oscar, and soon after, Verstappen would go to the pits and change. And in that process, he dropped to fifth, getting passed by the McLarens as well as Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. And Max was not a fan of how the race was going. He started lashing out on his team over the radio, saying they had a shitty, dumb fucking strategy. Now it's up to him to fucking save it. The commentators were talking about Verstappen's childish behavior and said maybe instead of getting that late sim race in last night and that early sim race in this morning, he probably should have got some sleep and he'd be less grumpy. I mean, they were just calling it how they heard it, I guess. We've all been there when you're not getting enough sleep, I guess. Disgruntled Verstappen would pass Leclerc to move back up to fourth, but on the 63rd lap, after battling with rival Lewis Hamilton, Verstappen would go for it, and it wouldn't go well. He'd make contact with Mercedes' car, get a little bit of air, knocking him off the track briefly, where he'd give his spot back to Charles Leclerc. And that incident prompted a look by FIA. They didn't find anything there, but you could start hear things getting a little nervy on the McLaren radio as they were pleading with Lando, like, hey, give the spot back to Oscar. And it was just continuing and continuing, and Lando was actually distancing himself from Piastri. And the calls were just like somewhere between a parent trying to teach their child the importance of team and how you have to come together, emphasizing how championships are won as a team. And it sounded like an executive letting their employee know, like, your decisions right now are going to make this uncomfortable for everyone. It was, you could feel the nervousness that in the conversations, and the pleading appeared to work, as just with 3 laps to go in the Grand Prix, Lando gave the spot back to Piastri, and Oscar Piastri would race to his first checkered flag, chalking up the Hungarian Grand Prix as his first ever victory. Some say maybe a little tainted. Norris finished second, the first 1-2 finish since 2021 for McLaren, while Mercedes' Lewis Hamilton continued his great stretch of racing, picking up his 200th career podium. Ferrari's Charles Leclerc finished fourth, with Red Bull's Max Verstappen in fifth. Max did have a potential penalty, like I said, from that contact with Hamilton, but nothing came of it. Ferrari's Carlos Sainz finished sixth. Red Bull's Sergio Perez salvaged some time here, finishing in seventh. George Russell eighth. Tsunoda ninth. And Canadian Lance Stroll rounded off the top 10 in his Aston Martin. Max Verstappen still leads the standings at 265 points. Behind him, McLaren's Lando Norris at 189, followed by Charles Leclerc with 162. Looking at the constructors table, Red Bull still sitting first. However, it is definitely a 3-horse race now. Red Bull sitting at 389, McLaren at 338, and Ferrari not out of it yet at 322. Only Sauber, Zhou, and Bottas have not yet secured a point this season. They're the only team at 0 so far. And not a long wait for our next race as the Belgian Grand Prix goes down next Sunday, July 28th. Bringing us to baseball, we had the home run derby, a little bit of pause in play to see some dingers. Philadelphia Phillies' Alec Bohm led the first round. Joining Bohm in the second round was Kansas City's Bobby Witt Jr., Cleveland Guardians' Jose Ramirez, and LA Dodgers' Teoscar Hernandez. Witt Jr. would sneak past Ramirez to advance to the finals. Bohm and Hernandez duked it out and would require a swing-off. But hold the pineapple. This just involved a few hits to see who would go to the finals. Hernandez would barely sneak in, and he'd face off with Kansas City's Witt Jr. We're in the final. Dodgers' Teoscar Hernandez would put up 14 and set the bar pretty high. Looked like he had it wrapped up. Then Witt Jr. would go on a long streak to put him one back of the leader. And his last attempt looked to be close, but came up a little short, giving LA Dodgers' Teoscar Hernandez the 2024 Home Run Derby crown, becoming the first LA Dodger to win the event, which, considering their history, I found quite surprising. Which brought us to the mid-season classic, the All-Star game between the American League and the National League. The AL started by sending Baltimore Orioles ace Corbin Burnes out. He'd allow Ohtani and Bryce Harper to get on base, but Burnes would get out of the jam and keep the game scoreless. The NL would then send out Pirates rookie Paul Skeens, who became just the fifth rookie to start an All-Star game, and the first since Hideo Nomo did it back in 1995. Skeens would get two outs before walking Soto to face Soto's teammate Aaron Judge, but Skeens would get him the ground out in an uneventful at bat. The second inning provided no runs, where Detroit's Tariq Skubal would allow no runs for the AL, just as Atlanta's Braves' Max Fried would allow none for the NL. Boston's Tanner Houck came out in the AL in the third inning, and he'd allow two on base before giving up a home run to Shohei Ohtani, who blasted a three-run bomb to open the scoring, giving the National League the 3-0 lead, but the lead didn't last long, as in the bottom of the inning, the National League sent out San Francisco's Logan Webb, who allowed two on before allowing a two-run double by Juan Soto, cutting the lead to 3-2, and then later in the inning, David Fry smacked an RBI single to tie the game at 3. Fourth inning had Chicago White Sox pitcher Garrett Crochet come out and look good. He may be acquired by a team looking to make a run before the trade deadline. The NL sent out Chicago Cubs Japanese star Shota Umanga, who followed suit and allowed no runs. Fifth inning saw Oakland A's pitcher Mason Miller come out and strike out Ohtani. Many pitchers going 100 miles an hour plus. Cincinnati Red pitcher Hunter Green came out, and he'd give up a two-run home run to Boston's Jarren Duran, who smashed it deep and put the National League up 5-3. Sixth inning saw Kansas City Royal Cole Reagans come out. He forced what looked like a double play, although it wasn't called. But we'd see that rare All-Star Game replay challenge where the call was overturned. The NL sent out Christopher Sanchez of the Phillies and Atlanta's Ronaldo Lopez. Those two shut down that inning. In the seventh, we saw Kansas City Seth Lugo for the AL. You might remember from episode 67. He gave up a hit to Cincinnati Reds sensation Ellie De La Cruz in his first All-Star game. In the bottom of the inning, we saw a pair of Phillies, Ranger Suarez and Matt Strom, finish it off for the NL. Brought us to the eighth inning, where hometown Texas Ranger Kirby Yates came out and got back-to-back Ks on a 1-2-3 inning. The bottom of the eighth was handled by Marlins Tanner Scott and Phillies Jeff Hoffman, which led the Cleveland Guardians Emmanuel Clace coming out for the ninth and last inning for the American League, looking to end the game. He'd strike out Brian Reynolds for the last out, clinching the 5-3 win for the American League. The 10th out of the last 11 for the American League, and it was the 22nd win in their last 27. Absolute dominance from the American League in this midseason classic. The MVP of the game was given the Boston Red Sox Jarren Duran. His two-run home run proved to be the difference maker in the game, and it's been a good year for Duran, and he's hoping that it continues to get better to see what the Red Sox do in the second half of the year, which brought us to the return of baseball. It was a brief break in the All-Star game in the major leagues, and how would the Jays come out of it? Well, they'd hosted the Tigers, and the game one, you had Jack Flaherty coming out for the Tigers, going up against Chris Bassett for the Jays. And in the fourth, Riley Green opened the scoring with an RBI single, and that'd get followed up by a two-run Mark Kenya home run. Tigers were up 3-0. But in the bottom of the sixth, Toronto All-Star Vladimir Guerrero Jr. would blast a two-run home run, cutting the lead to 3-2. And the Jays were hoping to make a big run after the All-Star break, but in the sixth inning, Bo Bichette, who had just returned from injury, left with injury again. Another calf strain, the third of occurrence of injury to that calf. Brutal injury for a guy who's been busting his butt to get back on the field. And this injury should keep Bichette out for at least a few weeks, taking him off the trade market for sure, if the Jays were even considering moving him. But in the seventh, with Bassett still out there, Wenceel Perez would take him yard for a two-run homer, making it 5-2 Tigers. But the Jays didn't give up. George Springer in the bottom of the eighth would hit a two-run home run to make it 5-4, but that's as close as it got as the Tigers won the opener. Second game of the series had the Tigers sending out Reese Olson, while the Blue Jays sent out UC Kikuchi. It was an emotional outing for Kikuchi, who may have well played his last game in a Blue Jay uniform. The July 30th trade deadline on the horizon. There's so many potential deals being thrown out there, and Kikuchi's name has come up aplenty. Shoulder soreness had Olson leave the game early for the Tigers, and they'd be fully relying on the bullpen. But as the game went on, we wouldn't see a run until the fifth inning, where Andy Ibanez would get an RBI double off Kikuchi to make it 1-0. Kikuchi would come out in the sixth, but before getting removed, he'd put a few people on base, but he'd have 8 strikeouts in the removal, and what could be his, like I said, last appearance as a Blue Jay. Relief Trevor Richards hasn't has the best outings leading into the All-Star game, and this one didn't look too good. As the bases proceeded to get loaded, he gave up a grand slam to Jake Rogers, blowing the game up as it was 5-0 Tigers. Tigers didn't end their running there. Andy Ibanez hit another RBI single off Trevor Richards, which meant the Jays go to the bullpen, bringing in Brendan Little, who threw a wild pitch and brought Ibanez home. A dreadful inning for the Blue Jays. They gave up 6 runs in the 6th. Tigers were up big. In the bottom of the 6th, George Springer would bring the Jays on the board with an RBI single. Then Vladimir Guerrero would hit another home run. This is the 2-run home run to make it 7-3. But that's as close as they got as the Tigers won again. And the Blue Jays were looking to avoid a sweep, sending Kevin Gausman to the mound to go up against Keider Montero. And the Jays opened the scoring up early, where George Springer continued his hot hitting series, where he'd lead off with a solo home run in the bottom of the first. Springer would continue to carry the offense, where in the bottom of the third, he launched a 2-run home run, putting the Jays up 3-0. Kevin Gausman was cruising until the top of the 5th inning, where he struggled a bit, gave up a few easy walks, which proved to be costly as he loaded up the bases, leading to Justin Henry Malloy smashing a grand slam, the second grand slam for Detroit in the series, and they went up 4-3, from down 3 to up 1 with one swing of the bat. The bottom of that inning, Springer would get another hit, hustling to secure a double, which was big, as the next batter up, Spencer Horwitz, hit an RBI single, and we were tied up at 4. The 6th inning, Blue Jays got runners on base and forced a pitching change, and Ernie Clement would step up and hit an RBI single, bringing home Turner, making it 5-4. In the 8th, the Jays brought in Green the pitch, and things looked dicey with 2 on. Carson Kelly hit one deep, looked to have a chance at a home run or at least extra bases, but Dalton Varsho showed off the hops, a huge catch near the wall. Next bat ended the inning, and Green would end up holding on for the Blue Jays, winning a roller coaster game 5-4 and avoiding a sweep by the Tigers. And talking about the Blue Jays, let's look at that American League East here, one of the toughest divisions in sports. The Orioles continue to lead the East as they won 2 or 3 against the Rangers coming out of the break. Just 2 games back of the leaders are the New York Yankees, and they're taking on Tampa Bay today to wrap up their 4-game series in Florida. They then head home to take on the Mets in a short 2-game Subway series. And just 6.5 games back in the division of the Boston Red Sox. They were hot going into the break, but cooled off a bit coming out, getting swept on the West Coast by the Dodgers. They'll be looking to bounce back against the Rockies before heading home to take on their rivals, the New York Yankees. That'll be some fun baseball over the weekend upcoming here. Anytime you got Yankees Sox, it's a good series. I mentioned the Rays are wrapping up that series with the Yankees. They're looking to stay above 500 before heading up to Toronto, which brings us to the basement of the division, where the Toronto Blue Jays are 15 games back of the Orioles. I talked about that tough series with the Tigers, and things will get interesting as the Jays host the Rays in a 3-game series before hosting the Rangers. The injury to Bichette stinks, but this is the time for the Jays to make a run and move up the standings. If they can't make up ground in these next 2 series, I don't know if things are going to get easier for them. Acting like Woody Page here on Around the Horn, I'm looking at the schedule, and after the Jays wrap up their series with the Rays and Rangers, they go on the road for series against the Orioles and Yankees before returning home for another series with Baltimore. Tough roads ahead for the Blue Jays, and we'll see if this team can make a run or go full sell mode. I'm not going to lie, I don't think the higher-ups believe in this team anymore. I mean, they haven't had a lot to go off this year, but I think they're going to start unloading guys. But I think as they unload them, it might inspire the team and they'll win some games, which management will probably try to take credit for, but just calling it what I see it. I think they'll make a little run. I think management will try to take credit, but it's all BS. I think it's tough going for the Blue Jays in the AL East. Leaving the East, we go to the AL Central, where the Cleveland Guardians still lead the division. Although they did lose 2 or 3 to San Diego coming out of the break, they have a 4-game stand with a hot Tigers team, and if Cleveland continued to struggle, they could end up losing lots of ground in this division, and that's because the 2 teams chasing them are both just 5 games back. The Minnesota Twins lost 2 straight to the Brewers and have a 3-game series with Philadelphia, so they'll be tested in interleague play. The Kansas City Royals are just 5-game backs. They easily swept the White Sox. Now they have some tough interleague play with a series against the Diamondbacks, followed by a series against the Cubs. Next up are the before-mentioned Tigers, and they've turned their season around a bit, still finding themselves 11 games back in the division. I mentioned that 4-game series the Tigers have with the division-leading Guardians. The Tigers follow that up with a series with the Twins followed by another series with the Guardians. So if the Tigers continue their winning ways over the next few weeks, they could really rock the AL Central. The basement of the division are the Chicago White Sox. I mentioned how they were swept by the Royals. They're still the only team in baseball that has not yet won 30 games. Getting plenty of calls for all-star left-hand pitcher Garrett Crochet. I imagine he'll be acquired by some team before the deadline. Wrapping up the American League, we settle in the AL West. The Mariners have been leading most of the season, but at this moment, we currently have a new leader. They are technically tied, but as I read the standings today, the Houston Astros are on top. They came out of the All-Star break and beat the division rivals Mariners 2 out of 3 to take the lead in the division. This team really struggled coming out of the gates, but much like Stella, they found their groove. And I see them sweeping the Athletics in their next series too, setting up a doozy of the weekend. Lots of good baseball in the upcoming weekend, where the Astros will be hosting the Dodgers in interleague play. Should be fun. And I mentioned those Mariners struggling against the Astros. Things look a little easier on the horizon, where they host the where they host the Los Angeles Angels before going on the road to play the White Sox. Two series the Mariners should be expecting to sweep and put some pressure on the hot Astros. Texas Rangers aren't down and out in the division yet. They're just 5 games back. They did struggle with Baltimore after the break, but they have a series with the White Sox, followed by that series in Toronto, so the Rangers will be looking to stay close in the division. The Los Angeles Angels are looking to come out of the break with some momentum, but only managed 1 out of 3 against the Athletics. The Angels are still alive in the division, 10 games back, but it doesn't look too great for them. The Athletics did have that good series against the Angels I just mentioned, but it's a crapshoot with Oakland. The park will be empty, and you never know how the game will go. They still reside in the AL basement, 4 games behind the Angels. From the American League to the National League, we'll stay out west in the NL West, where the Dodgers still lead the division, an 8-game advantage over the 2 teams behind them. I mentioned how the Dodgers came out of the break and swept the Red Sox. They have a tough division series matchup with the Giants before heading to Houston for that tough series on the weekend I mentioned. Expecting the Dodgers to go on a little run here, really start to take off with the division. But next up in that division are one of those teams that are 8 games back, the Arizona Diamondbacks, who won 2 out of 3 against the Cubs coming out of the break. They have 2 tough series coming up, one on the road in Kansas City, followed by a home series against the Pirates. The other team 8-game back, the Padres, as mentioned earlier, they won 2 of 3 against Cleveland. They have a 3-game series in the American capital before facing off with the Orioles. No easy games in baseball. 3 games back of that group are the Giants, who struggled with the Rockies and winning only 1 of 3, and things will be tougher for them in that 3-game series I mentioned with the Dodgers. The Rockies are deep in the NL West basement, but like I said, still fighting as they did against the Giants. From the West to the very competitive National League Central, the Brewers are still atop the division, beat a tough Minnesota team in Minnesota, and Milwaukee's still on the road for a tough series against the Cubs before returning home for a series with the Marlins. Behind the Brewers in the division by 5 games are the Cardinals, who won 2 out of 3 over the Braves coming out of the break, and they have a juicy series starting today with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Those Pirates are just 2 games back of the Cardinals and been looking good. They even took 2 out of 3 over Philadelphia coming out of the break. Again, that should be a fun series with the Cardinals. Just under 500 are the 2 teams trying to stay alive in the tough division. The Cubs are briefly out of the basement, but with series coming up against the Brewers and Royals, they could find themselves back there. Cincinnati Reds are right behind the Cubs after getting swept by the Nationals coming out of the break. Things don't get easier for the Reds as they have series with the Braves, followed by an interleague battle with the Rays. Wrapping up the division check-ins, we finish in the NL East, where the Phillies lost 2 out of 3 to the Pirates coming out of the break. But you got another Nick Castellanos home run after a big news. Just hours after Joe Biden announced he's dropping out of the U.S. presidential election, Castellanos smashed a home run. The outfielder has an uncanny timing for smashing dingers after big news drops. Phillies have back-to-back tough series in interleague play, taking on the Twins and Guardians in some AL Central battles. They could put up some tough games with the Phillies. The Braves are 8.5 games back, and they have a tough series with the Reds and Mets upcoming, so it could be tough for them to make up ground in the division. Those very Mets I talked about lost 2 of 3 against the Marlins coming out of the break. They're 12.5 games back. They have that short Subway series with the Yankees before hosting the Braves, so a bit of a tough stretch for the Mets. Just 4 games back of the Mets in the division are the Nationals, who swept the Reds coming out of the break, but they'll be tested when they face the Padres and the Cardinals here. The Miami Marlins reside in the National League East basement. It's hard to see what they'll do in the second half of the season. They did win 2 of 3 against the Mets, so maybe the Marlins will find their way. I doubt it, but who knows. With teams floating and standing purgatory right now, it's hard to see who will go full roster blow up. You have to look around the league and see what team is close but not quite there. The wild cards are so wide open with lots of games to play. So this is Risk City right now. The deadline being a little over a week away. You have to think White Sox, Marlins, Rockies, full-blown sellers, maybe even Toronto in that mix. But there's enough time for teams to collapse and for teams to rise. That third wild card spot, if anything, really causes hesitation on teams to pull a trigger. So teams play to win the game, as Herm Edwards said. So we'll see what happens. It's that time again, guys. One of the biggest spectacles in sports, the Summer Olympics. This year, the 2024 Summer Olympics will be taking place in France with host city Paris showing off to the world. The games open up this week. Open ceremonies taking place Friday, July 26th. Should be a wonderful scene to open up to the games. Even though the opening ceremonies take place Friday, there are games starting Wednesday, July 24th, like ASAP. The first events to go down Wednesday will be men's rugby and men's footy. Can't wait. I, for one, love the Olympics. Something about it being only 4 years really makes it much more impactful. You know, the athletes have a timeline to put it together, and once they're there, it's just something special about it. See the emotion on these athletes' faces when they win or lose. It's unlike any other league sporting thing because the teams are representing their country, and seeing people come out and talk about the sports they played growing up, and they don't get a lot of coverage. There's sports that I don't usually watch year by year that I absolutely adore watching in this Olympics. Basketball is obviously my favorite, and the USA Dream Team in 1992, eons ago. The world is caught up, and I'm hoping Canada will medal in the Olympics, as well as other teams, as they hope they have a chance. Australia thinks they can win it, and in the lead up, they haven't looked too great, but France feel like they have a chance. Lots to watch. The footy's always exciting. The men's side, you're not going to get a lot of players from the Copa America or Euros, but the women's footy side, always much more exciting than the men. I can't wait to watch Canada defend their gold medal as they're trying to win back-to-back Olympic gold medals. That'll crush the U.S. to even fathom that. And there's sports I don't watch regularly. Indoor and beach volleyball, amazing to watch. Basketball 3-on-3, super cool. Rowing, tennis, canoeing. Oh, I hit the microphone here. I'm getting wild. Canoeing, swimming, weightlifting, track, field, all of that. It's amazing. My wife Caitlin loves watching the gymnastics. Watching her break it down like I break down basketball, football, that shit lights me up, it's exciting. Plus I'm interested to see more of the breakdancing, or breaking as it's called. I don't know what that's gonna be like. So the only thing kind of killing me right now is the allowance of Israel in these games. I don't want to get political, but this is kind of fucked up. If you think of what they've done to Russia and how they can't represent themselves in this game for what they've done to Ukraine, but you're allowing Israel to come in, even though what they're doing in Palestine, it's kind of mind-boggling how it's got this far. Oh, this is not getting brought up. Like, how isn't this a bigger deal? How can you punish the one people for doing this, and you're not punishing these people for doing the same? It's going to be a real black eye on this Olympics if it continues that way, and I'm hoping something gets done before the games begin, but we'll see. Quick NHL news, Joe Pavelski announced his retirement. 18 NHL seasons, over 1,300 career regular season games, where he played with the Sharks from 2006 to 2019, and then with the Dallas Stars from 2019 until last season. One of the greatest American players we've ever seen, and it's a bummer he'll be in that group of one of the best to play that never won a Stanley Cup. Quick mention in footy news, England manager Gareth Southgate announced he's stepping down from managing the squad. He received lots of criticism over his time managing England, but his results are hard to argue with. Back-to-back Euro finals and a third-place game in the World Cup. Those are pretty good results, but not the result. The point of it, and as the song says, it's coming home, and he couldn't quite bring it home. So we'll see where he'll go. The U.S. have recently dismissed Greg Berhalter, so maybe the U.S. will try to bring him in. We'll see. But there was some big news in the MLS as Kevin Sullivan, at 14 years old, became the youngest player to debut in North American sports. He was substituted in for the Philadelphia Union, and yeah, that's pretty intense. 14. Talk about a lot of pressure on him. But looking at the MLS standings, you have injured Miami still sitting atop the East, even with injured Lionel Messi out. Cincinnati not too far behind them out west. Little tighter with the LA Galaxy leading the way and LAFC nipping at their heels. Real Salt Lake not too far behind. I didn't even mention the CFL last week. Shit got wild there. But to recap week 7 this past week, kicked off with a change of scenery involving the winless Edmonton Elks. They decided to part ways with GM and head coach Chris Jones. G. Roy Simon was named interim general manager, and Jarius Jackson was given the interim head coaching duties. New look team, same result. Ottawa would hold on to beat Edmonton 2014, moving Ottawa to 4-2, while the Elks dropped to 0-6. Tough to be an Elk nowadays. Saskatchewan Roughriders hosted their rivals, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, a very scrappy first half that didn't have any touchdowns. The only touchdown came in the third quarter when Riders quarterback Shea Patterson found a wide open Clint Rakovich in the back of the end zone. His only catch of the day was a big touchdown. Late in the game, the Bombers were looking to tie it up, and Zach Calera spotted his receiver was really making up yards after the catch. But a nice punch from behind on the Riders' defense forced a fumble. Big recovery for the Riders. They won 19-9, moving to 5-1 on season, even with Trevor Harris still out, while Winnipeg moves to 2-5. The weekend had some tight games with the Ticats hosting the Argonauts, and they looked to be in cruise control. Then Nick Arbuckle came in for the Argonauts and sparked the late comeback where the Tiger Cats barely held on, picking up their first victory of the season as they won 27-24. The Argos moved to 3-3. The weekend wrapped up with the BC Lions facing off with the Stampeders. This game went down to the wire, and the hometown Stamps would end up holding on for the 25-24 win. A massive win that was only BC's second loss of the season, and the Stamps moved to 3-3. Week 8 opens up with a doozy on Thursday as the Rough Riders head out east to take on the Montreal Alouettes. Friday will feature the Stampeders heading out east as well to take on the Red Blacks, and the Argos will host the Blue Bombers on Saturday. Sunday game will have the one-win Tiger Cats heading to Edmonton as the Elks look for a first win under the new regime. I mean, someone's got to win that game, right? For this week's short, I thought, why not something Olympics related? Obviously, I've never participated in the Olympics. I mean, that'd be dope, but it hasn't been me. But I have some Olympic related stories, like the 2012 games when they were taking place in London. My parents were living there, and I remember talking to my dad, who was so pumped about these tickets he got. Over the moon. He's like, men's basketball. And I was like, what? Who are you going to watch? And he's like, Argentina. And if you've watched this podcast before, you know I'm a big San Antonio Spurs fan. So the fact my dad got to see Manu Ginobili play, that was huge. He had a few pictures. That's something else. Plus other NBA dudes that played for Argentina. Luis Scola, Carlos Delfino, Andres Nocioni, just a few of them. It's really cool. And I mentioned how dope Olympic basketball has come. Like, a lot of those dudes were part of that Olympic gold medal winning team in the 2004 Summer Olympics in Greece. Like, Argentina's got some studs. Events like that you won't forget. And there was one in the Winter Olympics. I mean, this is still applicable. I know it's a Summer Olympics, but Winter Olympics still cool. I was living in UK at the time. The 2010 Winter Olympics were going on in Vancouver. I remember we were all staying up late to watch the ice hockey gold medal final with Canada's Cindy Crosby scoring the overtime winner over the U.S. The golden goal, as it would always be remembered. We were up late, losing our mind in the early hours in London. Something spectacular that I filled with pride and talked about at work with her and shit, which circles me back to my dad getting tickets for events in the 2012 Olympics. He was telling me how pumped he was to get hockey tickets, how he hoped to see Canada. And then I paused. I said, you know you're going to the Summer Olympics, right? And then it suddenly clicked in. He had bought tickets to hockey, but in the UK they referred to field hockey as hockey. And what we call hockey, they call ice hockey. So I had a good laugh. And he realized he was going to watch something he had never seen before. He said it was different, but he was hoping ice hockey. But hey, he got to see some field hockey in its action. So a little bit of bummer for me, timing wise, was the Olympics. 2010 Olympics were in Vancouver. I wasn't in the country. 2012 Olympics were in London. I wasn't there. But thinking back to some memories, even as a pup, Donovan Bailey winning the gold medal in '96 in Atlanta, huge moment for Canada. And we have a great sprinter now for Canada, putting running back on the map, Andre DeGrasse. Can't wait to see what he'll do, trying to add more medals to his collection. And it's not always about Canada. It's the historic moments Jamaica's Usain Bolt provided us, American swimmer Michael Phelps, the amazing magic out of American Simone Biles, who will be returning to these Olympics. She's a goat in the gymnastic world. And it's athletes overcoming the odds to make it the biggest moment of their lives. What moment in the upcoming weeks will be immortalized in history? Think of the 1936 Olympics in Berlin, where American Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals in front of a Nazi regime and Adolf Hitler, who spoke against the inferior races. Watching him win those medals there, I obviously didn't see it live, but these are moments you don't forget. And then there's terrible moments like the hostage situation, which turned into murder at the 1972 Munich Olympics. Or how about the 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico, where Tommy Smith and John Carlos held their fists in the air, kind of a black power symbol that would go a long way, causing controversy, but memories that will not be forgotten. That's what the Olympics are about, and I'm hoping we get the best of the best here with the best. And that's episode 70 in the books. The summer, it hasn't been the busiest sports schedules, but there's some good shit out there. Like I said, the Open, we got the Olympics. My WNBA episode is ready and will be out tomorrow. Pause on that league, as a lot of them are going to the Summer Olympics to represent their country. Some great basketball on the women's side as well to tune into. And my NBA episode's still in the works. I figured with the Summer League wrapping up tonight in their final, that'll be a good finale to wrapping up that episode. But hey, thanks for coming in again. This is episode 70. We're trucking. We're almost at retirement. We're past retirement, y'all. We're just going for it. Hopefully you can sneak some Olympic viewing in this week. I know the time difference in Paris makes things a little tough, but hey, do what you can do. But anyway, thanks again for coming out. Rin City out.